So this is just a quick one. I saw something very interesting today on the New York Times. They published a photo gallery with explanations on it looked like it was on the front page of all the women and children who were killed in Gaza recently by the Israeli government with their massacre, their bombing campaign just recently. And that's a very interesting thing. Interesting because, as you would be aware probably, that the corporate media have always been basically an arm of the U.S. national security state propaganda, basically. So because Israel is, the apartheid state of Israel has always been very helpful to U.S. imperialism, they do proxy wars for the U.S. and in turn the U.S. look the other way when they do their greater expansion project of expanding their borders and killing Palestinians and driving them out of Palestine, driving them out of their homeland, the indigenous population. It's an ethnic cleansing that's going on there, a genocide. So they're basically been protecting that narrative, the New York Times and other corporate media. And so for that to happen, for them to publish the gallery of and sort of highlighting on the front page those Palestinians killed, children and women, etc., is very unusual and makes me wonder whether the U.S. is finding Israel a bit of a liability, and maybe because the U.S. empire has China and Russia and Iran in their crosshairs, and as Goldman Sachs has indicated recently, that the new oil is copper and lithium, Bolivia being one of those countries that has a lot of lithium. If the U.S. empire is basically, because they've turned their attention to Asia, then that's why they have decided to basically maybe I don't know what's really going on. I just find it interesting that there seems to be this move away from being such a close ally of Israel. Now, I know that Secretary Blinken went over to Israel, and they've actually also given Israel another $735 million worth of military aid on top of the already $3.8 billion with a B that they give every year. And they did that right in the middle of the Gaza massacre this time in May 2021. So I really don't know what this is about. I just find that so odd that the New York Times would do something like that. So maybe somebody can make some suggestions, but it makes me wonder whether the U.S. is finding them a bit of a liability. I don't know. And therefore the corporate media are kind of undermining the propaganda narrative, the Hasbro narrative that the Israeli government has been putting out for many, many decades. But then on the other hand, then you have, as the Grey Zone reported recently, sorry, I have a little cat on my lap, and he's sort of doing a bit of a wrestle. So the Grey Zone recently did this report that they're basically the corporate media is trying to focus the attention away from Gaza and onto anti-Semitism, onto sort of making out as if there's a lot of rise in anti-Semitism around the place. And so that's what has been happening as well, trying to distract from what's been going on in Gaza and what the Israeli government has been doing to Gaza. And for those of you who are watching this and you're not familiar with this whole situation, this apartheid situation, I suggest that you watch the 7 must-watch programs from the Empire Files. And I'll leave a link to that in the information section. And also, if you watch Gaza Fights for Freedom, which is a documentary by journalist and filmmaker Abby Martin. And the last thing I wanted to say is I was on a live stream on Breakthrough News, and there were trolls. There was three trolls on the live stream. You can always tell trolls when they try to sort of promote a particular U.S. national security state narrative about a particular country. And someone said something to the effect of, asking this question of the Breakthrough News in the chat, something about what did they think about the 95% of people that voted for Bashar al-Assad. What did they think of that? Now, I immediately, what came to mind was that they were really basically wanting to say something, to put down the whole Syrian elections and all that kind of thing. Yes, Syria, it's interesting that there is that amount of people came out to vote for Assad, but then one has to, and they have had problems with democratic elections in the past, from what I understand. But apparently, this is actually a situation where 75% of the, 75% of people came out to vote. and that can be a very dangerous thing in a country that has the likes of al-Nusra and 3 other different militant sort of groups that have been funded by the US, terrorist type groups, the moderate rebels. It can be a dangerous thing trying to vote in a country where the US has that country in the crosshairs. There's 2 things I think about this, and that one is that Syria has been basically, Assad has helped protect Syria from US imperialism along with Russia and Iran. Russia has been accompanying oil vessels, oil tankers from Iran to Syria and has been escorting them, warships been escorting these tankers to Syria. And they've also been providing Syria with foodstuffs, and another country, which I'm not sure who it is, has been providing Syria with medical supplies. So they've been circumventing these awful economic sanctions by the US, which are an act of war, and which has been very beneficial to Syria. But Assad has actually, in some ways, helped keep Syria safe, putting aside all these propaganda efforts about the OPCW, I think it is, the weapons inspectors. There's been whistleblowers within the weapons inspectors saying that those they're absolutely false flags, those weapons, chemical weapons that Assad was supposed to have used on his people at a time when he's actually running high on support and stuff, to then go ahead and do that is a ridiculous thing as a strategy. So putting it, that's something that the US has helped keep going. It's being used, as a way of trying to destabilize Syria along with other things. But so Assad has in some ways helped keep Syria safe from US imperialism, which is no small feat, and I think that's why many people came out to vote, and he won so strongly in this election. And it's interesting to me when I was in this chat, and I think, I just thought, okay, no government is, all governments lie, but I just thought, I can see these people here are trolling here, and I said, it's fascinating to me that people who are from a country, the US, which is meddling in so many other democracies, or meddling in so many other governments, depending on which government it is, but basically they've overthrown 50 governments of countries plus since World War II. And it's interesting that the US has very sketchy elections. The Democratic Party did over Bernie Sanders twice. There's all sorts of voter suppression going on from both parties. It's a real, SHIT show. It really is. And so for anybody to be in a chat and complaining about Syria or Latin American countries, all that, the usual stuff that people, that trolls say, for people to be complaining about, Syria or any other country when the US has such dodgy elections, really, and they are the ones that need international oversight. They're the ones that need it. But of course, they're always pointing the finger at all these other countries, which is often the case with the US empire. They're always pointing at other countries and saying stuff about other countries that really, it's like, look in the mirror. It's what they should be saying about themselves. So it's fascinating to me that a lot of Westerners seem to feel they have the right to tell different countries what they should be doing, or who they should be electing, who they shouldn't be electing, how they should be doing it, when the US is probably as bad, is pretty much everything that they're accusing other countries of doing. I mean, they have this basically one big party with a right wing and a far right wing, the duopoly, and they won't allow any other parties really to sort of, they make it as difficult as possible. They even last election made sure that the Green Party was taken off a number of ballots. They do not play fair, and it is not a democracy, it's an oligarchy. And here they are pointing the finger. There's various citizens pointing the finger, US citizens pointing the finger at these other countries when, for example, Venezuela has one of the most transparent elections in the world. And yet you'll hear over and over again, the US saying, we don't recognize the results of the election of Venezuela. And Australia, where I live, the government here recognizes Juan Guaido for F's sake. I mean, it's disgusting. Anyway, so yeah, it just, over and over again, it just shows we have this sort of, imperialist, exceptionalist kind of an attitude that we feel in the West, feel that we can tell different countries who they should be electing and why they should be electing them, and why they shouldn't have elected that one. And if they elected the wrong person, which the West thinks is the wrong person if they're not going to submit to US empire, then that we need to overthrow their government. This arrogance and hubris that a lot of Westerners have, which really needs to stop. It's a sort of a colonialist, white supremacist attitude that is kind of offensive and outrageous. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say, just about those 2 points. And there was probably some other things I was going to talk about, but that'll do for now. So thanks for watching. My name's Trish Roberts. You're watching Faint Signals from Riga. Till next time. Bye for now.